It is quiet tonight. You hear the wind in the trees. A paper lamp moves gently in the dark. Somewhere, water is falling. A bamboo forest sings. Tonight, we tell an old story. A story about two kinds of people, the strong and the silent, the sword and the song, the samurai and the geisha. They lived long ago in Japan, but their stories still live today, full of honor, art, and mystery. So lay down, close your eyes, let your thoughts rest. And if you are new here, feel free to subscribe. You are safe here. This is a place for quiet minds. Far, far away, in the land of rising sun, there once lived men of silence and steel. They walked like shadows, their eyes calm like still water. They wore robes of dark cloth, and on their side, always a sword. Not just a sword, but a soul made of metal. These men were called samurai. That word means one who serves. But who did they serve? Why did they live like that? Why are they still remembered today? Let's go back in time. The year is 900. Japan is changing. There are emperors in golden palaces. There are farmers in muddy fields. And there are families, rich, powerful families, who need protection. There are no phones, no police, no laws like today, only loyalty and the sword. So the samurai were born. At first, they were guards, hired protectors, men who watched the gates of great houses. They kept enemies away. They watched the roads. They stayed awake when others slept. But the world kept changing. Soon, the samurai were not just guards. They became rulers. They led armies. They trained young boys. They gave their swords to the emperor, but often followed their own path. For hundreds of years, Japan was ruled not by the emperor, but by a warrior leader called a shogun. And under the shogun, the samurai became everything. They were the law. They were the order. They were the storm and the silence after. But a true samurai was more than a fighter. He followed a way, a code, a quiet path called Bushidō, the way of the warrior. Bushidō taught, be loyal, be brave, be honest, be kind to the weak, die before you break your word. These were not just rules, they were life. Some say a samurai would bow to a cherry blossom and cry if it fell, because the flower, like life, was short and beautiful. Every samurai had a sword. It was called a katana, made by hand, forged in fire, polished for days, balanced like a poem. They believed the katana held their spirit. To lose it was to lose honor. But even in battle, a samurai had to stay calm. He had to control his fear, control his anger, fight only when needed, speak only when true. It is said, the sword is silent, so must be the one who holds it. Even today, people remember the samurai, not just for how they fought, but for how they lived, with stillness, with grace, with purpose, and maybe with something the world still needs: honor. Far from the battlefield, away from the sword, there was another world, a quieter one, a softer one, a world of music and movement, of color and silence. This was the world of the geisha. When you hear the word geisha, you may think of beauty, of makeup, of dancing women in silk robes. But that is not the whole story, not even close. The geisha was not a dancer, not a wife, not what some people wrongly believe. She was an artist. Let's go back again. The year is around 1600. Japan is full of change, music, tea, and poetry. And from the streets of Kyoto and Edo, a new kind of woman appears. She does not fight with a sword. She fights with her art. She learns music, flute, drum, and string. She learns dance, slow, perfect, graceful. She learns poetry. She learns to speak softly, to walk without sound, to listen. She becomes a geisha, which means person of the arts. Some begin as young girls, apprentices called maiko. They watch the older geisha. They copy their steps. They carry their fans. They wear brighter clothes, more color. But they are still learning. Each day is filled with practice. Each step, each bow, each word must be exact. It can take years to become a true geisha. They live in special houses. With strict rules, they sleep little. They speak little. But their minds are sharp, and their hearts are strong. People would come from far away just to sit with a geisha, to hear her sing, to watch her move, to drink tea together, slowly. But they were not buying her body. They were buying a moment, a quiet evening, a dream. Geisha had no husbands, no children. They lived for their art. They lived for beauty. But many were also lonely, hidden, quiet in a loud world. Some were in love, but could never say. Some helped spy during wars. Others used clever words to stop fights before they began. They were more than pretty faces. They were bridges between war and peace, between silence and music. And today, in some parts of Japan, you can still see a geisha walk by. White face, red lips, eyes looking down, but never weak. Strong, still, timeless. Not all samurai were the same. Not all lived in castles. Not all were men. Let's look at some quiet truths, hidden like leaves under snow. There were female samurai. Yes, women could be samurai too. They were called Onna Bugeisha, women of the warrior class. They trained with weapons. They protected their homes. They rode into battle. One of the most famous was Tomo Gozen, a brave woman who fought like thunder, but looked like the wind. They say she held her sword like fire and never looked away. Some samurai loved poetry. Imagine this: a man in armor, writing a haiku about falling snow or cherry blossoms. Some carried tiny brushes with their swords, so they could write poems in moments of calm, between battles, under the moon. To be strong, but also soft inside, that was the samurai way. Samurai practiced Zen. Many samurai meditated. They sat still, eyes closed, listening to nothing, not even their own breath. Why? Because to fight with a clear mind, one must first clear the heart. No fear, no hate, only presence. Some even practiced tea ceremony. Yes, with full armor resting nearby. And in silence they poured hot water over green leaves as if the war did not exist. Death was not the enemy. To a samurai, death was not something to fear. It was a friend, a gate. They believed it is better to die with honor than live with shame. This led to a very serious act called seppuku, a ritual where a samurai ended his own life to keep his name clean. It was sad, but also sacred. Not all samurai were rich. Some were poor, very poor. They lived in small houses, ate plain rice, but they still followed Bushidō, still wore the sword, still bowed to the rising sun each morning. Because honor does not need gold. Some became monks. When wars were over, some samurai put down the sword. They shaved their heads, wore robes, lived in the forest, and became monks. Still warriors, but in a different way, fighting not others, but themselves. And even today, you may see someone walking quietly, with good posture, calm breath, kind eyes. Maybe they were never a samurai, but maybe they carry a little of that spirit. Maybe you do too. By day, the geisha stayed hidden. Their homes had sliding paper doors, soft steps, soft words, soft shadows. But at night, they came alive, not with noise, but with grace. A fan opens, a sleeve floats, a foot glides across the floor, and the room falls silent. Geisha lived in houses called okiya. Inside, rules were strict. Every action had meaning. When to smile, when to bow, when to leave. They woke early, trained long, slept little. As young girls, they were called maiko, still learning. They wore tall wooden shoes, colorful robes, their hair tied in careful shapes. They watched the older geisha, every word, every gesture. They listened without speaking. They waited for their turn. Each moment was performance. A geisha's life was like theater, but the play never ended. Even when she walked outside, people would stare. Some would misunderstand, some would whisper. But she kept walking, head low, heart steady. Because she knew who she was. Not a wife, not a toy, not a servant, but an artist. Love was not easy. Some geisha fell in love, but they could not marry. They could not keep lovers. That was the rule. So their hearts stayed hidden, like a letter never sent, or a song never sung. They smiled, but inside they were quiet rivers. They served tea, but also silence. People came to see them, sit with them, drink tea with them. But not for talking, not for touching. They came for something else. Peace. A geisha's presence could calm a storm, could stop a fight, could make even a warrior feel like a child again. In war, they became more than artists. Some geisha were spies. They listened. They remembered. They passed secrets in poems or hid messages in songs. Others gave soldiers comfort, not with hands, but with presence. In the middle of pain, they brought stillness. Even today, real geisha still exist. Not many, but a few. They walk through Kyoto with slow steps, eyes cast down, wrapped in silk. And when they pass, the world feels quieter. Which life do you think was harder, the geishas or the samurais? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to know what you feel. Time passes, names fade, but some people leave behind something that never disappears. Let me tell you about a few of them. Tomoe Gozen, the warrior woman. She was a samurai, but not a man. Tomoe Gozen lived in the 1100s. She rode horses into battle. She wore armor. She carried a long, curved sword. And she was strong, very strong. One story says she once fought a giant warrior and won. But she was not only strong, she was calm, precise, focused. Some say she fought not just with power, but with grace. Her story is still told today, in books, in plays, in dreams. Oda Nobunaga, the fearless warlord. He was one of the most powerful samurai ever. Oda Nobunaga lived in the 1500s. He wanted to unite all of Japan, and almost did. He was bold. He changed the rules of war. He used guns when others didn't. He took risks. He trusted few. Some feared him. Some followed him. But all respected him. He once said, "Life is like a candle in the wind." And one day, he died by his own choice, just like a candle. He blew himself out before the storm could. Miyamoto Musashi, the wandering swordsman. He never lost a duel, not even once. Miyamoto Musashi was not just a fighter. He was a writer, a painter, a thinker. He traveled across Japan looking for meaning. He slept outside, ate little, fought many. He wrote a book called The Book of Five Rings, a book about the sword, the mind, and the world. His message was simple. Know yourself. Know your enemy. Win without fighting if you can. Mineko Iwasaki, The real geisha. Many years later, a geisha named Mineko Iwasaki became famous around the world. She was born in the 1940s, trained from age 5, danced for kings and queens, was known as one of the most skilled geisha in Japan. But one day, she left it all. Too many rules, too much pressure. She wanted to live freely. She wrote a book. She told her side of the story. She showed the world that geisha are not what the movies say. They are real women, with pain, with pride, with stories to tell. Mata Hari of Japan. Some say there were geisha who worked as spies during war. They dressed in silk, but carried secrets. They danced for generals, but remembered every word. Their names are hidden, but their work may have changed history. Sometimes you don't need a sword to win a war. Sometimes you just need to listen. These people, warriors, dancers, thinkers, lived in different times, but all of them walked a quiet path, and all of them still speak to us in the silence of the night. The night is quiet now. The stories have been told. The sword is back in its sheath. The fan is folded. The lamp is low. Somewhere, a samurai stands by a gate, watching the stars. He is still. He does not speak, but he remembers. And somewhere else, a geisha walks softly through the garden. The flowers turn their heads to watch her pass. She does not rush. She does not speak, but her silence says everything. Their worlds are gone now. The palaces, the tea houses, the wars and dances. They live only in memories. But maybe those memories are enough. Maybe somewhere deep inside, you carry them too. A little honor, a little stillness, a little beauty in how you move through the world. So tonight, rest your sword, close your fan, let your breath slow down. You have learned enough for today. If you enjoyed this quiet story, please like the video. Maybe even subscribe if you'd like to hear more stories like this. And before you go, tell the samurai good night. Tell the geisha good night. Tell yourself good night. Sleep well until next time. You are safe here.